The Future of Money, Governance, and the Law is hosted by the Government Blockchain Association, a worldwide community to connect, communicate, and collaborate. This show is produced by Podtex. To learn more and how to host your own show, go to www.podtex.com. Podtechs. Podtex, your partners in podcasting.
Hi, my name is Gerard Daché. I'm the Executive Director of the Government Blockchain Association. And today I have Joe Neidig on the phone with us today, or on the podcast. He's the president, the leader of SIMBA Chain. SIMBA Chain is a GBA member. And I guess I've known you, Joel, for maybe about a year, a little bit more than a year.
Yep.
And so excited to have you on the show. Welcome to the Future of Money, Governance, and the Law.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. Thanks for having me today.
Well, listen, the format that we typically follow with most of our guests is we just ask them to tell their story. And so tell us a little bit about how you got into blockchain and where this whole thing started for you.
Yeah, so I got into blockchain back in 2016. Even before that, I was mining Bitcoin and different things like that. But really actually getting into blockchain, I submitted a DARPA grant. So that's the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And my co-founder, Dr. Ian Taylor, who's a professor at the University of Notre Dame, we got together and we put forth this proposal. And neither one of us, Ian had been in distributed computing for many, many years. And I was a serial entrepreneur, building applications on iOS and Android. And I've been in manufacturing for many years and doing a lot of R&D projects. And we just saw this call come out, and we thought it was kind of interesting. It was DARPA's first blockchain application call, and we submitted and we won. And so what we realized as we got further into it, it was really difficult to build blockchain applications if you're just getting into it. And so we wanted to make a nice, easy tool to build, the various blockchain applications and on different blockchains. So not just specific to an Ethereum blockchain or other like a Hyperledger or anything else like that. We wanted to be pretty agnostic. And so anyway, that's kind of how our company kind of took off and got started.
So what was that first DARPA project for? What were they asking for in the proposal or the grant?
Yeah, it was very broad. It was really about secure messaging, but they were focused on anything from purchase orders inside the military, very complex supply chains. And they were also interested in telemetry. So things with air traffic control and just anything with cryptography, having to be able to securely message groups back and forth, but then also have an audit trail of those communications. So
it's fascinating. It's fascinating all the things that blockchain can do. So without telling us too much information and having to kill us, what sort of solution did you propose to them?
Yeah, so we just kind of focused on a RESTful API, so something that was an application programming interface that could easily auto-generate a protocol that could communicate with various blockchains and different data storage items. So blockchain isn't necessarily conducive for storing vast amounts of data. So we do this thing called off-chaining, and that's where we can store things in an S3 container in Amazon Web Services or on your file system somewhere on your computer, or it's in an Azure Blob storage or somewhere like that. Or IPFS is kind of the big thing in blockchain. So if you're familiar with the interplanetary file system, that is another off-chaining capability that we offered.
So you delivered this first solution, right? And then what kind of blockchain did you use? Was it did you use one of the Hyperledger, or what sort of technology did you build it on?
Yeah, so we started with Hyperledger, and then we quickly moved to Ethereum because back in 2016, Hyperledger Fabric was changing quite a bit. And so Ethereum was pretty basic as far as they didn't have all the channeling and everything that Hyperledger has. Lots of different tooling, and so it's really good for different use cases. But we kind of flipped over to Ethereum shortly after that because of solidity, and it was just really easy to build smart contracts that way. And now we do support both. So fast forward to the future, we support 5 different blockchains right now.
So then, since you were building essentially on 2 different platforms, right, is that why you created this API? Because for the listeners, what you guys do is you just create a platform to make it really easy for people to build blockchain solutions, right? So is that kind of why you did that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we built when people come to our platform, they come to it's a smart contract designer. And so it's like Visio where you can just drag and drop, and then it auto generates the code for you and the API to connect to all your other systems. So we did that to help people that from a low code standpoint, you still have to do a little programming, but we tried to stay towards the more low code side of things to help people that aren't necessarily coders, but can get up and going fast.
Cool. So then you had that first engagement. Then what happened next? How did the company grow? Because you guys have had a lot of success lately. So
Yeah,
what was the next first step?
Yeah, we've raised $2 million. We're all the way, we're in our seed round now, or completed our seed round. And so we're looking to an A series now and have 20 employees in the company and continue to hire more people. We're still growing. And we've gotten, multi-million dollar contracts with the US government. So that has helped with building on, our original DARPA project that we won. And then, yeah, we've had projects with Department of Energy, Navy, Air Force, and several, kind of large customers like Dow Chemical. So we've kind of grown the company that way. So some of it bootstrap, some of it VC, venture capital.
Excellent. What sort of applications or products did you build for Navy and Energy and all these different organizations?
Yeah, so Department of Energy, we did a distributed solar application so it would connect into microgrids. So there's all this different power capabilities when you kind of go off grid, but the large power generators like a Duke Energy or, for instance, or a NIPSCO, or ComEd in Chicago, they were really focused on if these microgrids are these people that are generating power in rural areas, if all of a sudden they want to bring their power onto the grid, it's kind of a disruption. And so there's this thing called like the California duck curve. And it's problematic if you bring on demand or not, no demand, and then you have all this energy, where do you store it? And so what this was trying to do was provide a marketplace or a clearinghouse for that. And then there was renewable energy credits that people could provide to the marketplace for these different rural grids that were coming onto the main grid. So it's interesting, very good blockchain use case. So we used Ethereum for that.
In that case, let me just add, in that case, it sounds like you had a couple things going on. You had the sort of the distributed ledger type thing, but did you also then have a token or some kind of a cryptocurrency that was in use there?
Yeah, we just used Ethereum just straight up, and just that was the gas that was used, and then that was the currency that was used to transmit the different energy. So, and how people would address that was there had to be the clearinghouse. There's already a clearinghouse for RECs, which is called renewable energy credits, and so that's where that would happen, and that's done state by state. And so the idea, this hasn't gone to the next phase, we're still working on that, but the next phase is to try and go like nationwide with that, because right now states are handling those renewable energy credits, but it'd be great for state to transfer those.
We have an energy working group. Chris Peoples leads it, and it'd be great. I don't know if you've had any interaction with him, but if you go to gbaglobal.org/working-groups, you'll see his contact information, because he's doing all kinds of stuff in the energy space. It'd be great if you guys can collaborate together.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we did open source some of the code to the project, so that is on our website, simbachain.com. And in the Navy, we continue to do the communications with the Navy. I can't get into a whole lot of that because some of it's classified, but there's a lot of stuff going on in that space. And in supply chain, so we have a supply chain project with the Navy on track and trace of shipments and product that's happening between tier one suppliers like Boeing to the Navy. So that's a really interesting project that we have going on. It's a multi-year project.
You shared with me earlier that you really wanted to help this technology essentially get adopted, right? So talk to me about some of the things that you've done to kind of make this technology a little bit more accessible to people.
Yeah, so what we did is we have came out with SDKs. So we have Java, Node.js, .NET, Python SDKs that help people that are familiar with, they might not be familiar with Solidity or these other programming languages that blockchain uses or Web3, but they know Python or something like that. So we've provided that. So there's a SIMBA library that handles that. Then we also, like I said, we have the smart contract generator that was, you don't have to know any code. To build your first application on SIMBA Chain, you don't have to code anything. You can log in app.simbachain.com, go to the smart contract generator first. There's some examples already there in the library, but you can, like a car demo and some other things, but you can build your own, just drag and drop. It auto generates. Then you can go to your applications page on the website, and it's very much like WordPress when you go to deploy, and then you can deploy your application, and then you choose which blockchain you want to do. And you don't have to, there's test nets. So we provide the test nets. If you don't want to go to a main net, and you can do a test net and then deploy that way. So without any coding, you can actually build your first application to begin with and deploy it. And it handle all the wallets too. So we have an HD wallet on the browser. Everything's cached. We don't store any private keys for you. So we let the user handle all that, and it handles all that for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then you've done some things to kind of help college kids and some younger folks get familiar with the technology, with hackathons and stuff. You want to just talk a little bit about some of those things you've done?
Yeah. So we had you, Gerard, come out to the Notre Dame Idea Week last year. Unfortunately, Notre Dame Idea was canceled this year because of the COVID crisis. But last year, you yourself came out, and we had a couple other judges from Block, and we also had from Chip Lannon from Accenture, and then also Dr. Ian Taylor, my co-founder and CTO of SIMBA Chain, at the hackathon. And it was really cool to see some of these college students come up, and high school students. We even had high school students participate. And so they used SIMBA Chain to build their applications. And the first place winner did a human resources time tracker. The second place did a tracking system or a platform that you could track when people are donating to charities, and you can know like that your donation went to 100% of the charity as opposed to, or to the end user that was going to get it, because a lot of charities might take like 50% off the top because of administration fees. So this way you could track like how much of your donation's really going to the end cause. So that was really cool. And then the third place team, I think, did like a job seeking application and kind of like identity capability there. So it was just cool to see all the different applications that came out from the different winners.
So listen, you guys have been in this kind of early, and you started seeing the challenges and coming up with solutions, and then responding to Navy, energy, commercial companies. Where do you see blockchain right now in terms of sort of its use, its adoption? I mean, some people say, hey, one day it's going to be everything. Then other people, there's all kinds of resistance. But where do you kind of see blockchain now? It's now April of 2020. Where do you see it in the, between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, I think we really see it. We're laying the ground. I mean, really, it's like we're kind of railroad guys right now. I think we're laying the groundwork for how this will all be laid out. A lot of it is it's a lot of education. So I really appreciate GBA because it's just really educating so many people right now. That's one of the most difficult things, because people are like, well, why don't I just use a database? And there's reasons why you don't do that. We don't probably have time to go into all that technical stuff right now. But in supply chain, it's very difficult to have this reconciliation. And if you're not on the same ledger, it's just like when you're waiting in a bank, and why when I go to make a deposit and the bank's like, well, and it's from a different bank, even in the same town, they're like, well, this $500 check, it's going to take about another week to clear. Like, why does it, it's just some of that happen. Now, sometimes it doesn't really happen. Some banks have banking relationships, but it's because there is no shared ledger. So there's no way to reconcile in a fast way. And that's how you have all these these kite check schemes and all this other stuff, people trying to stay ahead of the game and things like that from a money transfer standpoint. But that's kind of the thing. And the same thing happens in supply chain, is that there is no, clearinghouse or whatever you want to say, or connectivity between these different disparate users in the supply chain. And so providing this one ledger, whether it be a multi-ledger capability where, hey, maybe they're not on the same ledger, but there's a way to be these kind of like rapid atomic swaps or these other things that can happen to validate this asset, and this, this money's been transferred to the proper location, and the physical goods been, certified in their in the right quality aspect. These are just those complex situations that have been driving this kind of adoption over the years. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're making connectivity, and obviously we're starting with some like a lot bigger players. Like I said, the Navy, Boeing, looking at it that way. But that's the kind of thing. So we're building these blockchains that are private blockchains, but they're shared amongst these consortiums. And then they, now they can reconcile where they can query across the blockchain. They can find out where the items are. It's all the same single truth. It's not, okay, it's in this person's database. Well, the other organization doesn't access that database. Well, you got to call somebody to go, hey, so this is the big problem. And so blockchain is really conducive to providing that security, but yet providing the visibility for sharing that kind of data.
The Government Blockchain Association is actually building the GBBP, right, which is the Government Business Blockchain Platform. And Joel, I think you were on some of the early calls when we were starting to look at the GBA token, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it took us about a year to kind of just get off the ground with that, and then we said, well, we've got to build a blockchain for this. And as we started building it, we realized, well, wait, it's a multi-blockchain platform that can connect to private and public blockchains, right? So we're actually looking at working with GBA members like you guys to create this interconnective tissue, this fabric, so that whether people are building in Hyperledger or Ethereum or EOS or whatever the blockchain, they can essentially connect and move assets and information from private to public and back to private blockchains again. And so it's a really exciting project that I'd love to talk to you about sometime after this podcast.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So you really are doing two things, right? It sounds like you're building solutions for enterprises, right? And at the same time, you're building a platform that anybody can use your platform to build their own applications. Is that right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we can be a build partner, or you can just do it yourself on our do it yourself platform. So we just come at it both ways because everybody's got different needs, and we realize you can't just go, well, here's the tool, go use it. We try to say, hey, if you need a build partner, we're happy to provide. We have resources to do that too. So,
and then do you do things where you'll come in and maybe help them kind of get the architecture and then train them to essentially be able to carry it on themselves?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's our main goal, is to kind of just really democratize the capability of building blockchain applications. And it's not easy. I mean, it's definitely, and it's a changing space. So you have to be able to, update and quickly build, new solutions for the new updates that come out. Ethereum 2.0 is coming out. There's Binance just announced their smart contract, their smart chain. So there's a lot of different capabilities that we have to continue to provide. So we currently support Ethereum, Quorum, RSK, and Stellar. And we have Hyperledger. Hyperledger is available in our enterprise package.
All right. So listen, let me ask you this. What kind of resistance do you face? Because I've been talking to folks in different sort of domains, like elections and different places like that. And when you talk about blockchain, you got a few people that are leaning forward. You got a lot of people leaning back. So how have you perceived, experienced, and dealt with, skepticism and stuff like that?
Yeah. And you're going to get that everywhere you go. It's just like any new technology. I had a startup that was a 3D printing software as a service. I ended up getting acquired by Siemens. But at first, with every new technology and every startup I've ever done, there's always that skepticism. But there are early adopters that see the value. So we try to look at the value prop and try to explain, well, here's why blockchain is the solution, and whether it's an old way or the current technology doesn't meet up to what those kind of capabilities are offering. And whether it's from a decentralized identity standpoint or from a sharing capability, or there's reasons why we don't share the information because I don't have control over it. If I do, so there's all these different reasons why people are like, well, I'm just going to continue to use my database, but I'm not going to harness the power of this new value proposition that blockchain brings. So
yeah.
So what we do is we just try to sell the solution, and not really, blockchain isn't the solution. We just try to sell the idea of what it can do. And that's the solution that we're selling, not as much as blockchain. And blockchain, sometimes people, if you just say distributed ledger technology, they kind of, or I'm using a distributed database, or, things like that. I think sometimes the blockchain word gets equated to Bitcoin, which I'm not sure why it continues to get kind of name.
Yeah.
But and honestly, there's nothing wrong with Bitcoin either. I don't know why. I mean, obviously there's things that can be used for good and bad, but I think it's mostly used for. It's been a positive, in my opinion, for the world.
When the telephone first came out, they said that it was evil, it was satanic, because if people weren't looking at each other, if they weren't communicating face to face, then people would start lying to each other a lot more, and that civil society would fall apart because nobody was looking at each other when they talked. So every technology gets that.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
when you go to create solutions, especially for government enterprises, they have FISMA requirements, and they have authority to operate, and all kinds of security requirements. If you're interacting with like an Ethereum or something like that, how do you deal with the security concerns of an Ethereum blockchain?
Yeah, so different groups for Navy and the Air Force, we're not doing Ethereum obviously, but you can do Quorum, and it's Ethereum based. It's just a private permissioned network that you can deploy. But yeah, so that's one thing. Yeah, Department of Energy is not as obviously we did that on the Ethereum network, and but yeah, there's definitely, like you just said, you have to go through the risk management framework, and then you finally get your ATO, which is your authority to operate. And so you do have to go through those different steps when you're deploying these kind of networks or these kind of solutions. And that happens. It doesn't, and blockchain is not, I mean, it's any type of software. So any type of software have to go through that kind of, those kind of capabilities have to be addressed.
Do you think there's ever going to be a point in time when governments are going to allow transactions to process on public blockchains?
I think there is definitely going to be, especially when you think about public services. So public services, just trash, garbage would be one. Your water meter, different things like that. I think you're going to see a lot more of that happening, and it'd be a lot more efficient, and the traceability will be a lot easier to track those different things. So I think that's one thing. Those are a couple items that I think will be eventually released as this, as more things get built out. But yeah, I mean, from a defense standpoint, I don't think you're ever going to have any public blockchain usage. It is interesting though that there is going, and I shouldn't say that completely, because there is definite talk about how the military is not going to be building a 5G network themselves. Like they plan to use like AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, Verizon, as the spectrum.
Wow, Huawei.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, Nokia and Ericsson are the only other producers other than Huawei. So, that's kind of that big, because that's the big thing is like it's so expensive to build those networks right now that's where the military is like, we're going to be using some commercial items. And so that's already out there. And so you will have to have, like, blockchain will be a piece of that 5G network to communicate securely because of the VPN slicing, and that has to happen inside of there. So
I have a colleague inside the government, and he said that one of the things that they're looking at doing is prohibiting end-to-end encryption. And I thought, that is something. I'm not sure a lot of people would be really happy with that. But people, if you look at how some things like privacy coins move across blockchains, it poses interesting opportunities and challenges for folks in government.
Right.
Do you
and I think in the end, like, it's interesting. I think in the end, criminals will only use like cash in the future. I mean, because it's very hard to trace in a physical component but now you're already seeing like companies like Chainalysis, CipherTrace, all these other companies that have come out to trace these digital currencies and really put a focus on it. And I think as the government, the CFTC and the SEC put in more, and the FBI and IRS, put in more, they invest more in those kind of traceable technologies, there's definitely going to be able to, track and trace those better. So they just haven't spent the money yet. They haven't put the investment in yet to track their digital currencies. So
yeah, and a lot of countries are looking at ending cash, right, for that same reason. So what I perceive, in fact, the Blockchain Research Institute, I think next week they're gonna have Giancarlo, former CFTC guy, who is going to be talking about the digital dollar and their interest and their efforts essentially go away from cash entirely. But I think that's going to drive bad actors into privacy coins.
Sure. Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that'll be the next, Moderno and all that stuff. I think it's going to be. There's definitely going to be. Like I said, I think the government's going to invest heavily, like the CFTC, SEC, IRS, FBI. They're going to invest heavily into the tracking of that stuff. So,
where do you think the opportunities are for companies like yours or companies that want to get into the blockchain space? What do you think are some of the, again, it's now April 2020, over the next 6 months to a year, what do you think are the best opportunities for them to pursue in the government space?
Yeah, in the government space, I think definitely there's definitely NIST 800, like the security side of things. So people being compliant about getting their different networks in compliance and, tracking that information. I think blockchain potentially standing up a consortium to handle that kind of certification. I think that's a great opportunity. I think definitely in, I think that obviously with the coronavirus coming out, I mean, there's a whole bunch of blockchain applications I think people are doing from if you want to try and keep privacy, but yet track that kind of like track and trace is a big thing of contention. But how do we, deal with the privacy and things like that when you're trying to deal with safety? And so I think there's a lot of opportunities there that we don't have to forfeit your civil liberties, but you can still provide a technology that can keep people safe. So it's a huge problem, I think. But yeah, I think so. So there's another one. I mean, like I said, energy is a big one for blockchain. I think that's a huge thing from a government standpoint. And then, I think those are kind of the major ones right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the GBA Working Groups page and you look at all those different areas, right? Supply chain, smart city, energy, asset management, all of those it's incredible. We're seeing and voting. So we have a voting.
Yeah, voting is a big voting's one.
Yeah,
yeah, and I've seen land ownership or
land title.
Yeah, title. That's a big industry. So, and I saw Wyoming's been big into those kind of capabilities. So I know they have some parcel tracking on a blockchain out there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different spaces for sure.
Yeah. So tell me, how did you find out about the GBA? How'd you get involved? What's been your experience, your connectivity with the Government Blockchain Association?
So I think my first interaction, Gerard, was with, I think I saw a post that you had on LinkedIn, and that's what I was like, ooh, what's, so that's when I started and that was probably maybe 2018, probably 2018, it's a couple years ago. And so I saw a post that you had, and I was like, oh, I need to get involved in this. And so that was where it got started. So then SIMBA joined, and then we been a partner. So
yeah, and then you guys were. I know that I think you spoke to the chapter meeting, and then you came to, I think, the symposium that we did in at George Mason, right?
Yeah.
In September. Yep. Did you guys get a chance to come out to the event we had at the U.S. Capitol?
Yes, I think Anjan Roy and Michael Novak from SIMBA Chain were at the they were at the Future of Money.
The Future of Money Governance and the Law at the U.S. Capitol was January 31st.
Yeah, so they were definitely our team, a couple of our team was out there. So
yeah, we had about 350 people from all over the world, from as far away as New Zealand and Africa and Croatia and all over the place, sitting there. And it's funny because we did that on the same day that the impeachment vote was happening. So
yeah, right.
Never a dull moment, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
But the entire event was so non-political. I don't think anybody even mentioned it. So
sure, yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about when you're trying to do any type of business or any type of economic growth. It's pretty much, it seems very bipartisan, right? I mean, other than there's always this scariness of this new technology, but I think when we're trying to make everybody's lives better and improve things, it seems like a very bipartisan effort.
Well, listen, I'm going to share something with you. Now, as far as I know, I don't think anybody really knows what my political leanings are, because in my role, my capacity, it's very important for me to be nonpartisan.
Sure.
But I will say that I've noticed something very interesting. And I think that this kind of speaks to the whole grand scheme of the thing. This technology, I think, is really causing two polar groups to coalesce, right? Because if you look right now, China is investing huge sums of money into a national blockchain platform. Venezuela did the petrodollar.
Sure.
So you got China, you got Venezuela, you've got a bunch of organizations on the left really trying to use blockchain as a mechanism of control,
Right.
right? And then you've got the Bitcoiners, the folks that the groups that I would put more on the libertarian side, right?
Right.
Freedom. We don't need government. We don't want Big Brother constantly, watching every keystroke, and all of that sort of privacy, self-sovereign idea, all of that kind of space is really more towards the independence, right? But what's fascinating from a GBA perspective, right? Congressman Soto, who was generous enough to allow us to use the Capitol for our event, a number of the folks who've gotten involved with GBA, and we're pretty much open to anybody being involved, right? We've had most of them have been on the Democratic side of the aisle that have essentially gotten involved and participated, right? Now,
Sure.
I don't know what that means, right? I mean, I would like to see a lot more sort of bipartisan kind of equal, because my
Right.
goal is everybody should have a seat at the table and all voices should be heard. But
Right.
it's interesting that globally it's the more centrally planned, centrally controlled folks that essentially are using this technology in that way, and then within the U.S. it's been mostly more the Democratic folks, and that there may be a whole lot of reasons for that, right?
Mhm.
But it's just I don't have any
Yeah.
commentary on it other than it's an interesting observation.
Yeah, no, and like you said, it's just like it's how can there be like all these privacy coins and then things like trying to and it's or then but yet there's other groups that are trying to use it for like a control side. So it's like it's just like the internet, it can be used for good, bad, indifferent.
Yeah.
It's just another technology that can be used for good or it can be used for bad, and so that's what we get every time we have new technology come out.
And one of the research studies we're doing right now is called it's cryptocurrency adoption and the impact on government. And the question that I'm asking the researchers is, as more and more people move into peer-to-peer currency, and they are, we're just looking at the number of wallet downloads and the number of transactions and things like that. I mean, cryptocurrency went from basically zero to hundreds of billions of dollars in 10 years, less than 10 years,
Right.
right? And so as that happens and transactions are not happening through banks, right? The government essentially in 1972 deputized the banks to be arms of the government because they use it for influencing, monitoring, and control. But as more of that economic activity starts to happen outside of that mechanism, how do governments respond? Right? How do they, monitor, influence, and control? And governments have a legitimate purpose, right, to do that to have a safe and orderly society. But
Right.
if those mechanisms essentially are no longer being used or essentially are becoming diminished, how does governments respond? And I think, if you have you ever heard of the story of the Chinese bamboo tree? Right.
No.
So what the Chinese bamboo tree does is you put the seed in the ground, you water it, nothing happens. You water it, nothing happens. A year goes by, right? All of a sudden the hype is gone. People are walking away. They're laughing at you. 2 years goes by, nothing. Three, nothing. Four, finally, after 5 years, I think that the stats is it grows 90 feet in 6 weeks, right?
Wow.
Because what happens is for the 5 years, it's building an elaborate, strong root structure underground. It's collecting all the nutrients, and that's what I'm seeing happen in the blockchain and the cryptocurrency space. Right, we're seeing cryptocurrency ATM machines and wallets, and all of the infrastructure and being built. And so
Right.
I predicted at some point when all of that infrastructure is solid, and again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but we're going to see this ecosystem expand at an unbelievable rate, and traditional fintech systems are not ready for it,
Right.
right? And we've seen how Corona has just in pretty much overnight impacted the global economy. Well, you take somewhere between $2 and $6 trillion of new money supply, drop it in to the fiat money supply, and you've got all these folks with wallets that have their Bitcoin is not can't be diluted like that.
Right.
Uh, you know, And the other thing that's really fascinating
Exactly.
is how the U.S. is so different than the rest of the world. If you look at the top 30 wallets, or let's say currency debit cards, right? The top 15 of them cannot be used in the U.S., right? So we've got a huge ecosystem that I think is growing globally and internationally that the U.S. is not a part of. And again,
Right.
is the U.S. How do we? When you got countries like China investing literally billions of dollars in their national blockchain infrastructure, and we got a couple pilot projects.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're definitely. I mean, I would say that's probably one of the biggest faults is we are definitely behind in that area of not investing enough into this new technology. But I know hopefully that'll change. I think like you said, Congressman Soto, and there's other groups that are inside government that are really catching on and realizing that it's really important to maintain this kind of, if they want to maintain this kind of capability of being like, a dollar is tied, a barrel of oil is tied to tied to the dollar in the way it's traded, then you were going to have to digitize, moving forward. I think that's highly important. And I think that's what China's eyeing is like, hey, if we can be the digital, supply chain and how money is transferred, then we can up in the dollar and things like that. So
Yeah,
definitely a power struggle there, and how they can, and like I said, it's beyond my pay grade of how they figure that, like the monetary
yeah,
policy, all that stuff. So, but
yeah,
I'm fascinated by, from SIMBA Chain standpoint and even GBA standpoint is like, hey, how do we make this easier for people to implement so they can so the good ideas can come to the top, right?
yeah.
And that's what I'm excited about.
So if somebody's interested in kind of getting more down the blockchain space or potentially building out blockchain solutions for either individually or for their enterprise, how can they get in touch with you? What's sort of a good way to kind of move down this path with you and SIMBA Chain?
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way is just go to simbachain.com. So that's Simba, like the lion, and then chain.com. And then you can create a login really simply on our platform. We have a training platform too, like a learning management system that you can log in with your SIMBA Chain account. But app.simbachain.com is where you can really get started and start playing around with our platform. And then we're in Microsoft Azure. So you can, once you get building in app.simbachain.com, you can actually go to Microsoft Azure Marketplace, actually get the full enterprise package. And then from there, you can really start, you can take it into your enterprise, into the cloud, and we have an on-prem deployment too. So people that want to do on-prem, they have those deployment as well. But the first place is just go to simbachain.com. It has all documentation, SDKs, has the platform you can log into and start, and it's free to begin with. So we're a freemium platform to begin with, and you pay. There's different tiers of payment that you can grow into.
Excellent. And then if they want to reach out to you personally, is your contact information on the website, or can they get to you through the website?
Yeah. So, info@simbachain.com is the best way. I mean, we have a chat window. So if you want to get in touch with us, we have a, intercom chat window right there that you can start chatting live with our customer service people. So, and then I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find Joel Neidig on LinkedIn and, message me, DM me there too.
Right. Yeah, and we'll put all that information in the show notes as well. And so when we're done, why don't you just email me whatever links or whatever you want to put in the show notes, and we'll drop that in there as well.
Great.
Joel, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk about what SIMBA Chain is doing and how folks have a low-code option to kind of get started in this space. And just grateful that you're a part of GBA. Appreciate your support. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. It was great, and go GBA.
All righty. All right. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
The Future of Money Governance and the Law is brought to you by the Government Blockchain Association, or GBA. The podcast brings together leaders in the public and private sector to discuss how government and industry can work together. We talk about how to enhance the integrity of our institutions and the quality of life for the people they serve.